Putting a tree inside your house for Christmas is one of the most pagan things you can do.
All right, let's see it.
Long before Christmas ever existed, ancient pagan cultures across Europe celebrated Yule, the winter solstice, the longest night of the year.
So the data do not support the claim that Yule was a celebration of the winter solstice prior to the existence of Christmas. They don't even support the claim that that was the case prior to the Christianization of Europe. Now, one of the big issues that we're going to run into in this video is that virtually all of the claims being made here are based on accounts that were written primarily in Scandinavia and in England centuries after the Christianization of Europe. They're usually coming from Christians, but even when they're not, they're being filtered through a Christian interpretive lens, and they're representing traditions as they existed after centuries of Christian influence. And even in the earliest of those accounts, Yule does not seem to have been celebrated initially at the winter solstice. So according to the Heimskringla, which is the saga of Norwegian kings, it was King Håkon I of Norway, who reigned in the mid-900s CE, who said we're going to move the celebration of Yule to align with the celebration of Christmas at the winter solstice. Scholars think that prior to its movement to align with Christmas, it was celebrated on Midwinter's Night, which was actually a month after the winter solstice, in January or sometimes even early February. So once again, this is an issue that's going to come up repeatedly because the claims that are being made here are going to be based on accounts that come from well after the Christianization of Europe, or as late as the 19th century, which we're going to talk about in a little bit.
And during that darkness, they brought evergreen branches, wreaths, and whole trees into their homes as a symbol of life that survives the winter. And the evergreen tree became a promise. Light will return, spring will come again, life endures.
The data do not support the claim that prior to the use of Christmas trees among Christians, the celebration of Yule involved bringing whole trees into the home, whether they were then decorated or not. That's just not a practice that is attested anywhere prior to its very first attestation anywhere in the historical record, which is in 15th century Christian homes in the upper Rhine regions of France and Germany. And for the very best social media discussion of this, you've got to check out Religion for Breakfast's video, The Very Recent Origins of Christmas Trees. This discusses the scholarship, cites a lot of work that has been done on when and how Christmas trees originate. Here are some of the peer-reviewed publications that are going to be talked about in that video. And it also discusses the fact that the Christmas tree is pagan in origin claim originates in the 19th century among German nationalist writers who were trying to gin up a shared ethnic identity and origin, a pan-German identity that would then lead to German nationalism that did what it did in the early and mid-20th century. So here are some of the sources that are going to be cited related to that. But if you want the best discussion and all the details about where the Christmas tree comes from, according to the available data, you've got to check out Religion for Breakfast's video.
And this tradition didn't just come from one place. Several cultures shared this idea. Some of the biggest influence came from Germanic and Norse paganism. During Yule, people would decorate their evergreen trees with apples, candles, runes, charms, and it represented the sun, blessings, and the spirit of their ancestors. Evergreens were believed to protect the home from evil spirits during the dark months. The Celts viewed the evergreens as sacred because they stayed green when everything else died. They would bring branches indoors as protection and good luck, believing that they housed woodland spirits.
So none of these claims are supported by any data that predate the Christianization of Europe, and most of these details actually come from the 19th and 20th century, mainly from folklorists working in the early 19th century, from those German authors that we already talked about, as well as from more recent and well-meaning attempts on the part of neo-pagans to try to reclaim a heritage that is thought to have been appropriated by Christians during the Christianization of Europe. However, the data don't support support that reconstruction of the history. The data pretty squarely place the innovation of the Christmas tree within organic Christian contexts and don't support the reconstruction of any pre-Christian Germanic or Norse origins for that convention. It's just not something that is attested anywhere in the historical record until it pops up within Christian communities and households in the Upper Rhine region in the 15th century in Germany and France.
Romans decorated their homes with evergreen boughs during the festival of Saturnalia, celebrating renewal and the return of the sun.
So we got a few things to note here. First, Saturnalia was not a celebration of renewal, and it did not occur at the winter solstice. Saturnalia was a celebration of Saturn, a god of agriculture and abundance. It was a harvest festival, and its main day was December 17th, and then that celebration could stretch out for as many as 6 or 7 days. So the latest we have attestation of its celebration stretches out to the 24th. It did not occur at the same time as the observed celebration of the winter solstice in the Roman Empire. So it was a separate celebration from the winter solstice. Now, we do have classical sources that attest to the use of evergreen boughs and branches in celebrations during wintertime. However, it was more generally associated with any winter celebration, and mostly with celebrations associated with the calends, the beginning of the new year, the end of January, and not specifically with Saturnalia, although the use of evergreen boughs and branches certainly overlapped with the celebration of Saturnalia. So there is some truth to these claims, but some of these claims are also not supported by the data.
So how did this tradition become Christmas? Well, centuries later, Christian missionaries realized that they couldn't get pagans to give up their winter traditions, so they absorbed them. By the Middle Ages, the Yule tree blended with Christian symbolism. Apples became ornaments, candles became lights, blessings became prayers, evergreen protection became a Christmas miracle. But the meaning, renewal, hope, and the return of the sun stayed the same.
So obviously, because the data do not support the notion that the Christmas tree originates in the celebration of Yule and in pre-Christian Norse and Germanic celebrations, this reconstruction of the process of appropriation of the Christmas tree from the celebration of Yule and pre-Christian Norse and German traditions is also not supported by the data. This is something that developed after the development of this notion that this all comes from pre-Christian Norse and pagan traditions. And again, that's just not supported by any data.
So whether you want to call it Yule or Christmas, the symbolism mostly stays the same. It is about life in the dead of winter and hope when there is darkness. And it's a reminder that warmth and light always return. Ex tenebris lux.
Obviously, that's a beautiful message, and that resonates with the way a lot of people think about Christmas and the way a lot of non-Christian peoples think about the winter solstice and winter celebrations and the way they have thought about it throughout history. But the notion that the Christmas tree is an appropriation from pre-Christian or non-Christian traditions is just not supported by the data. It is, as best we can tell, an internal Christian innovation of the 15th century CE. And the fit for this video has been Wolverine.